In 1991, Mohamed Siad Barre, the president and dictator of Somalia, was overthrown, and civil war ensued. The tragedy of the Somali Civil War resulted in the death of 500,000 people and created approximately 1 million refugees. Over 100,000 of these refugees were resettled to the United States, of which more than 25,000 resettled in Minnesota, many of whom were aided by a support agency established and run by former Somali refugees. However, Somali refugees faced numerous challenges, including preserving their religious practices, recruitment to terrorist organizations, and the FBI's perceived discrimination in counterterrorism efforts. In spite of the tragic civil war, the Somali community triumphs by building thriving communities, overcoming prejudice, and creating a place for themselves in all areas of American society. Somalia gained its independence from Britain in 1948 and was ruled democratically until 1969, when Mohamed Siad Barre became dictator through a bloodless coup. Barre imposed martial law throughout Somalia after a rise in opposition groups during the 1980s threatened his control. Amnesty International said in August 1988 that since 1981, the Somali government had used torture and widespread arbitrary arrests, ill treatment, and summary executions of civilians suspected of collaborating with the rebels. As a result of the oppressive laws imposed on the Somali people, one guerrilla operation, led by the United Somali Congress Clan, attacked Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, in 1991. During this attack, Barre was forced to flee Mogadishu and was overthrown, along with his regime. The guerrillas were united against Barre, but with this common enemy defeated, the guerrilla clans were so divided that they could not unite to form a government. As a result of these divisions, no leader emerged to fill the power vacuum left in the wake of Barre's ousting. Due to the absence of a national leader, the guerrilla clans descended into chaos and a civil war ensued. Simultaneously, famine ravaged Somalia, intensified by the civil war, as clans looted and destroyed crops and farmland. These tragedies led to the death of over 500,000 people and caused approximately 1 million more to flee their homeland and become refugees. Most of these refugees fled first to Kenya and lived in refugee camps where conditions were deplorable. Charles Godry, head of mission for Doctors Without Borders in Kenya, said that Kenyan refugee camps demonstrate woefully inadequate conditions. 41% of refugees questioned say their shelters do not provide sufficient protection from rain, and around 1 in 10 refugees have no access to latrines. Along with the lamentable conditions, Somalis had to wait to be resettled by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, who prioritized refugees by the urgency of their individual resettlement need. Depending on their prioritization, refugees lived in these camps anywhere from 2 months to a decade or more. Wait, be patient is what I was told when I contacted the Resettlement Support Center, but 12 years is a long time to hold out, wrote journalist Asad Hussein, who was born, raised, and educated in the Dadaab refugee camp. Nevertheless, over 100,000 Somali refugees were resettled to the United States, and of those, about 25,000 resettled in Minnesota. These refugees came to Minnesota mainly due to the availability of jobs, strong refugee agencies, and the social services offered by state and federal agencies. These refugee agencies helped Somalis find housing, education, and provided English language classes, and the social services gave Somalis legal assistance and protection. Somali refugees who were resettled in Minnesota lived primarily in areas where they could find unskilled jobs that don't require English fluency or literacy. However, before they resettled in Minnesota, many were teachers, business owners, and professionals in Somalia. Due to the lack of job transference, financial resources, and the time commitments required, few refugees were able to re-establish their former credentials. When we as Somalis came here, we had to start all over again, stated Muhammad Ali, a resident at Cedar Riverside, who also emphasized that regardless of what higher credentials you once attained, you had to start from the bottom. In response to this challenge, a group of Somali refugees united and founded the Confederation of Somali Community in Minnesota, CSCM, in 1994. This organization, the oldest Somali nonprofit in Minnesota, was created by Somalis, for Somalis. The founders, who were members of the earliest groups to be resettled in Minnesota, used their previous experience and struggles from their own resettlement as a guide to help acculturate new Somali refugees. Suleiman Ahmed, a member of the Somali community, stated,
"There are other Somalis who came long time ago and they struggle so that they know what is good for me and they know what is bad for me."
CSCM's mission is to strengthen the capacity of Somalis in Minnesota to become contributing members of society while keeping their culture. They also focus on a youth leadership program to equip today's youth to successfully navigate life's challenges. CSCM provides basic needs to 4,000 Somali refugees annually and resides at the Brian Coyle Community Center. Cedar Riverside Youth Council member Muhammad Jama stated,
"Growing up around Brian Coyle was a way to escape a lot of things in the streets. So it was very safe and very positive place for me to be around."
This organization has triumphed as a pillar of support within the Minnesota Somali community. Although the Confederation of Somali Community in Minnesota was created to provide aid to Somalis, Somalis still endured obstacles, including religious challenges, recruitment to join terrorist organizations, and perceived discrimination in counterterrorism efforts. Somalis in Minnesota have faced religious challenges because daily prayer rituals often conflict with established American routines and schedules. One way Somalis overcame this challenge was by establishing mosques, where they can practice Islam and remain connected as a religious community through worship and classes. Somalis also faced recruitment to join terrorist organizations, and many feel they have been targeted by the FBI in counterterrorism efforts. The tragedy of September 11, 2001 brought gloom and fear into the Somali community. Although most denounced the attacks and terrorism, some Somali Minnesotan individuals have joined the ranks of terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. This has prompted the U.S. Department of Justice to create a counterterrorism pilot program named Building Community Resilience.
If these young people are comfortable with their identity in the U.S., they'll be less likely to join extremist causes.
However, this program has resulted in another challenge for Somalis in Minnesota because many now believe the FBI and U.S. government have targeted them by using informants to catch recruited Somali Minnesotans through the program. This has led many to view the program's goal as preventing only Islamic terror groups and not violent extremist groups as a whole. The Somali American Task Force stated in 2015, "Counterterrorism work of the last several years has wrongfully stigmatized our communities through the use of surveillance, informants, and other targeting of Somali Muslim communities not connected to any suspected wrongdoing." Although many disagree, some from the community are in support of building community resilience. We view this pilot program as a unique opportunity to engage our youth in positive programs, stated Muhammad Farah, a member of the Somali community. With support on both sides, the program remains controversial within the Somali community. In the wake of these obstacles, in 2016, CSCM received $100,000 in grants to improve their youth leadership program as a method to prevent youth from being radicalized. The enhanced program focuses on school attendance, risky behavior prevention, social skill development, and creating safe recreational activities during after-school and out-of-school time. Some mosques are acting through de-radicalization models by accepting and providing social and mental support to radicalists instead of imposing zero-tolerance policies. The Somali community has also triumphed as they have expanded from primarily unskilled labor to professional fields, education, and politics. One former refugee, Ahmed Amin, who came to the United States when he was 12, taught history at Roosevelt High School and is now assistant principal at Sanford Middle School in South Minneapolis. In November 2018, Ilhan Omar, another former refugee, was elected to the House of Representatives and is the first Somali American to be elected into Congress.
Regardless of whether we win or lose, this gets to shift the narrative of what is possible.
This was a major triumph for Somalis and Minnesota, as the Somali diaspora now has a voice in the U.S. federal government. In spite of the tragic civil war, the Somali community triumphs by building thriving communities, overcoming prejudice, and creating a place for themselves in all areas of American society.